his tailored suit soaked from the rain, his eyes burning with a dark, primal hatred. It was the only thing stopping the Alpha from lunging at the woman he had been married to for 3 years. Blood trickled down her arm, staining her sleeve. Her voice hoarse and thin. "I did exactly what you asked. I gave her my." "You think anyone believes that is a coincidence?" Behind him, Ziva sobbed into a tissue. "You've always hated my daughter." Ziva cried out, her mascara leaving black streaks down her cheeks. But she would never, ever hurt a child. The heavy doors of the ward swung open and a doctor walked out, his face pale. He didn't even look at Liora. He handed a digital tablet to Carmel. To an adult wolf, it's a minor irritant. But to a 3-year-old child with a weakened heart, she hadn't been near the poison in years. For 3 years. Stepping into her personal space. "I am done tolerating your presence. Get out of my sight before I forget you're a woman. Don't touch her." Carmel barked at a nurse who tried to help Liora stand. He spoke to her in a soft, of a man protecting his entire world. Liora stood alone in the hallway. She realized then that her marriage hadn't ended today. It had ended the moment Carmel found his true mate. Today was just the funeral. Nightstand sat a single piece of paper. Divorce. The word was printed in bold at the top. "I will leave your father with nothing but the clothes on his back. Your people will pay for your spite." The threat was real. The Ellen Pack was the most powerful force on the continent. Carmel could destroy her entire lineage with a single phone call. Liora looked around the room. Her marriage had been a business deal. To pay off her father's gambling debts. She had tried to be a good wife. She had stayed quiet when he brought his true mate into their home. "I thought I meant something to you," she whispered. Even if it wasn't love. He didn't care about the truth. He didn't care about the 3 years of her loyalty. He only saw a convenient way to get rid of the woman holding him back from his true family. Kalila's illness had been the only reason he kept Liora around. She was nothing more than a donor in a wedding dress. Liora picked up the pen. The ink felt heavy. With a few quick strokes, she signed her name. Liora Thorne. She was no longer an Ellen. 3 years of her life, erased in 5 seconds. "A car is waiting outside," Carmel said. His tone was professional, cold, and final. "You can keep the vehicle." She stopped and looked back at him one last time. And somewhere deep down, you know that you're doing this because you finally found an excuse. Looking small and fragile. I don't know why you hate me so much, Liora. I just wanted to be with my mate. Is that such a crime? Ziva began to sob again. Instantly, Carmel was by her side. Pouring rain. She didn't take the car. She didn't take the clothes. The window rolled down, and a low, unfamiliar voice spoke. Get on. Who could this be? A friend or another enemy? And what will Liora do now that she is free? This is only the beginning of her story.
Liora stared at the man through the sheets of rain. The drizzle from earlier had turned into a heavy downpour. It soaked her clothes until they stuck to her skin like a second layer of ice. Her trainers were heavy and filled with murky water. She had never realized how long the walk was from Carmel's estate to the main road. She shouldn't have left the keys on the counter. She should have taken a coat. It was too late for regrets now. The private road was a ghost town. No cars. No lights. Just the sound of her own breathing until a distant roar broke the silence. The motorcycle engine growled. A single headlight sliced through the dark. It was bright and blinding. Liora raised a hand to shield her eyes, waiting for the bike to pass. It didn't pass. The bike slowed. The engine died with a low purr that vibrated in Liora's chest. The rider was a shadow in black leather. His bike was brutal and dark, looking like something out of a nightmare. Liora stepped back on instinct. Her heart felt small and tight. This looked like the start of a horror movie. The rider pulled off his pitch-black helmet. He shook out his dark hair. Liora froze. She knew that face. It was sculpted, cold, and covered in a day's worth of stubble. It was Kavi. He was Carmel's estranged brother and the person everyone in the family called a lost cause. In 3 years of marriage to Carmel, Liora had only seen Kavi twice. Once at the wedding and once at a dinner. Carmel never said he was back in the city. Kavi reached behind him and pulled out a spare helmet. He held it out toward her. What? Liora stammered. Kavi's brow furrowed into a deep line. Get on, Liora. I don't have the patience to convince you. He tossed the helmet. Liora scrambled to catch it, nearly tripping over her own feet. She looked down the long, empty road. There were no taxis and no buses. She was freezing and desperate for a warm bath. With a shaky exhale, she walked to the bike. She pulled the helmet on and climbed onto the seat behind him. Hold tight, Kavi said. Liora reached out and gripped the edges of his leather jacket. Kavi let out a sharp scoff. Suit yourself. He kicked the bike into gear and the world blurred. The bike flew down the road. Liora let out a shriek as the sudden speed nearly tossed her off the back. She didn't care about personal space anymore. She wrapped her arms around his waist and held on for her life. Kavi didn't slow down. He wove through the city traffic like he wanted to see how fast he could make her heart beat. Liora squeezed her eyes shut. She didn't open them until the bike finally stopped in front of a high-end apartment complex. You can let go now, Kavi said. Liora scrambled off the bike. Her legs felt like jelly. Her stomach did a violent flip. She doubled over, dry heaving into the cold air. The urge to be sick was overwhelming. She stayed down for a few minutes until her breathing calmed. When she stood up, Kavi was leaning against his bike. He watched her with eyes that showed nothing. He didn't offer a hand. He didn't ask if she was okay. He just stood there with his helmet dangling from one hand. "Why did you come for me?" Liora asked. Her voice was thin. "I didn't ask for help." Kavi shrugged. "I never said you did." Liora wiped her face. "So what now? You dump me in front of some fancy building and leave?" Kavi tilted his head. "You think this is fancy?" Liora looked at the modern glass and steel. "Yes. It's mine," he said flatly. Liora shouldn't have been surprised. Even the outcast of the Elon family lived better than most people. "You're staying here," he added. He turned and started walking toward the glass doors. "I don't think this is appropriate, Kavi." He stopped. He looked back over his shoulder just enough to glare at her. "Then go back to Carmel." The name felt like a punch to the gut. Liora wrapped her arms around her wet torso. She looked at the dark street, then back at the warm lobby. "I'm not your problem," she whispered. "You're not," Kavi agreed. "But I'm offering you 4 walls and hot water for the night. What you do tomorrow is up to you." Liora followed him inside. They stepped into the elevator. Kavi hit the button for the penthouse. Just as the doors started to close, a woman tried to step inside. "No," Kavi said. The woman gaped in shock as the doors shut right in her face. Liora looked at the floor. Carmel had always said Kavi was terrifying. He wasn't wrong. The penthouse was huge and quiet. Kavi unlocked the door and stepped aside. "Stay. I'll be back." He didn't wait for an answer. He turned and headed back to the elevator. Liora stood in the middle of the room, dripping water onto the floor. She tried to sit on the couch, but another wave of nausea hit her. She ran for the nearest bathroom and barely made it to the toilet. She was still gasping for air when she heard the front door click. Kavi walked into the bathroom a moment later. Liora looked up at him, her face pale. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't know what's wrong with me." She felt the sting of tears. She didn't want to cry in front of him. Kavi didn't say anything. He just handed her a pile of things. There was a fresh towel and a set of clean clothes. Sitting on top of the pile was a small, rectangular box. A pregnancy test. Liora stared at it. "What is this?" "Your scent is different," Kavi said. His voice was cold and steady. "It's barely there, but it's changed. It smells more like his." "That isn't possible." Liora shook her head. Kavi leaned against the doorframe. "You mean you and Carmel never slept together?" Liora gagged at the blunt question. "Use it," Kavi ordered. Liora felt a surge of anger and fear. How could he know anything about her scent? He was a stranger. She snatched the clothes and the box from his hand. "Get out." Liora slammed the bathroom door and locked it. "Liora. Open the door. Now." Kavi's voice cut through the heavy silence of the bathroom like a blade. Liora didn't move. She sat on the cold tile floor, her back against the bathtub, staring at the small plastic stick in her hand. 2 faint red lines stared back. They looked like a death sentence. "Liora. I don't repeat myself." The handle rattled. Liora knew Kavi Elon wasn't a man who valued patience. He was the shadow of the Elon family, the one they whispered about in dark corners. She stood up, her legs feeling like lead, and unlocked the door. She brushed past him without a word, but Kavi didn't follow immediately. He lingered by the doorway, his dark eyes drifting to the wash basin where the test sat in plain sight. When he finally walked into the living room, he found Liora collapsed on the sofa, her face buried in her hands. "Will you tell him?" Leora's voice was a jagged whisper. Kavi sat across from her, his posture rigid and predatory. I can't exactly let you run off with the Elon air in your belly, can I? Liora flinched as if he'd slapped her. The reality of it made her stomach turn. One night. One drunken, desperate night 6 weeks ago when Carmel had come home broken over another fight with Ziva. Liora had been his comfort, his loyal wife, and he had used her before discarding her like trash the next morning. Please, Liora choked out, her eyes red and streaming. I'll do anything. Just don't tell him. He'll take the baby and give it to Ziva. I can't let her touch my child. Kavi let out a sharp, cold scoff. If you wanted to be pathetic, you should have stayed on your knees and begged Carmel before he threw you to the street. Tears don't work on me. The pity she expected wasn't there. Instead, his words acted like a spark to dry wood. Liora snapped. She stood up, wiping her face with the back of her hand, her eyes flashing with a sudden, sharp heat. I don't need your sympathy, she snapped. I don't need a single thing from any of you Elons. All your family knows how to do is use people. You hurt everyone you touch. Well, fine. I'll get back at him. I'll make sure he regrets every second of this. A ghost of a smile touched Kavi's lips. It was gone in a heartbeat, replaced by a look of intense focus. Good, Kavi said. Then I have a proposal. Let's get married. Liora froze. What did you just say? The doctor who gave you those vitamins before your last blood test? Kavi leaned forward, his voice dropping an octave. He bought 3 grams of wolfsbane 2 days ago. He's also an old friend of Ziva's. Do the math, Liora. You aren't just an exile. You're a target. Liora felt a chill wash over her. Ziva wasn't just trying to replace her, she was trying to erase her. I intend to make you my wife, Kavi continued, his gaze never wavering. With me, you won't have to look back. You won't have to wonder if he's coming for you. When I bend you to my will, his name won't even be a memory. Only mine will be on your lips. Liora couldn't find her voice. She spent the night staring at the ceiling, the weight of the world pressing down on her chest. By dawn, the choice was clear. There was no going back to her own pack. Her father would only hand her back to Carmel to maintain the peace. She was alone. The next morning, Kavi placed a folder on the coffee table. Beside it sat a small, velvet black ring box. You're leaving for Ramat today, Kavi said, his tone purely business. The banishment works in our favor. It keeps the pregnancy a secret while I finish my business here in Tura. A plane ticket and a handler are already waiting for you. Liora looked at the ring box. No romantic speech? No down-on-one-knee moment? I'm not proposing, Liora. I'm hiring you, Kavi said coldly. That ring is your employment badge. Read the terms. Liora opened the folder. The words were clinical, but the intent was lethal. My goal is simple, Kavi said, watching her face. I am going to ruin Carmel. I will take his money, his power, and his pride until he has nothing left. And when he is at his lowest, when he comes crawling to you begging for a second chance, you will be the one to push him off the cliff. Liora felt the air leave her lungs. The hatred between these brothers was a canyon she couldn't see the bottom of. In exchange, Kavi added, I protect you and the child. No one touches you. No one finds you. You have my word as a Elon. Liora picked up a pen. Her hand trembled, but her grip was firm. I'll do it. I'll be your wife. I'll play the part. But the physical side, we wait until after the baby is born. Kavi stood up and walked over to her. He didn't touch her, but his shadow loomed over the table, dark and heavy. There is one more thing, he warned. I don't care if you still love him. While you wear that ring, you are mine. If you break this contract, if you go back to him or even look his way with longing, I will kill him. And then I will kill you. Liora looked at the paper. She thought of Carmel's cold eyes during the divorce. She thought of Ziva's smirk. Then, she thought of the 2 red lines on the test. She signed her name in quick, jagged strokes. Kavi took the paper and tucked it away without looking at it. Liora picked up the ring. It was heavy, cold, and beautiful. As she slid it onto her finger, a shiver raced down her spine. She had escaped the wolf, but she had just signed her soul over to the devil. "Pack your bags," Kavi said, turning toward the window. "The car leaves in 10 minutes. You look like you just saw a ghost, Carmel." Jaren, the beta of the Elon pack, leaned against the balcony railing. He didn't wait for an answer. He just watched the way Carmel's knuckles turned white against the stone. Below them, the ballroom of the Tura estate buzzed with the sound of clinking glass and fake laughter. Carmel didn't look at his beta. His eyes were locked on a single man moving through the crowd. Kavi Elon. His brother. The man who had been a nameless rogue just 3 years ago was now the guest of honor. "He shouldn't be here," Carmel said. His voice was a low growl. "A year ago, I was the sole heir. Now grandfather opens the gates for a stray." The stray brought Maisel Incorporated with him, Jaren reminded him. The board members are already calling him a savior. They love a comeback story, especially one that comes with a multi-million-dollar merger. Carmel watched the way the local executives swarmed Kavi. They were the same men who had sworn loyalty to Carmel just months ago. Now they were practically bowing. It made his stomach turn. "Shouldn't we do something about him?" Jaren asked. Carmel shook his head slowly. He forced his breathing to steady. "No. He's not a threat to my position as Alpha. Not yet. Just keep a close eye on him. I want to know every move he makes." As if he heard the words, Kavi looked up. His eyes met Carmel's across the distance. There was no warmth in them. No brotherly recognition. Just a cold, calculating stillness. After a long moment, Kavi turned back to his admirers without a word. "Let's get this over with," Carmel muttered. He left the balcony and entered the heat of the gala. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and wolf pheromones. Ziva immediately stepped into his path. She wrapped her arm around his, her long nails digging into the fabric of his suit jacket. "Did you notice how they practically lined up to greet your brother?" Ziva whispered. She leaned in so close her breath, smelling of champagne, brushed his ear. "Gods, they're so pathetic." Carmel didn't look at her. He tolerated Ziva for the sake of his daughter, Kalila. Stability was the only thing he cared about giving the girl, even if it meant putting up with Ziva's constant clinging. "Try to act like you're enjoying yourself," Carmel said. "I'll try," she snapped. Her smile was tight and practiced. "But look at him. He moves like he owns the place. He's a rogue, Carmel. He doesn't belong in a suit." Kavi was making his rounds with a calm confidence that made Carmel's skin itch. He didn't look like a man who had been surviving in the wild. He looked like a king returning to a throne he had already conquered. Kavi eventually steered his way toward them. He stopped a few feet away, holding a glass of sparkling water. "Carmel," Kavi said. He gave a sharp, formal nod. "Kavi," Carmel replied. He forced his facial muscles to relax into a mask of politeness. "Welcome home. I see the corporate world suits you better than the woods did." The tension between them was a physical weight. Guests nearby slowed their walking, their ears perked for a fight. Ziva couldn't help herself. She looked Kavi up and down with a sneer. "You clean up well for a rogue." Kavi's gaze shifted to her. It was heavy and freezing. "You must be Ziva. I've heard things." Ziva stiffened. Her grip on Carmel's arm tightened until it hurt. Before she could retort, the sound of a cane tapping against the marble floor silenced the immediate circle. The patriarch of the Elon family approached. His silver hair caught the light of the chandeliers, and his dark eyes missed nothing. He was the man who had built their empire, and even in his old age, he commanded the room without saying a word. Kavi, the old man said. Grandfather, Kavi responded. His tone was respectful but lacked the desperation for approval Carmel usually felt. The old man narrowed his eyes. You came alone? Where is your wife? And your son? Carmel saw his opening and stepped forward. Yes, Kavi. Where is this mysterious family? No wedding photos. No announcements. It's almost too convenient, don't you think? Like a show staged just to please grandfather. Kavi didn't blink. He didn't even look annoyed. He simply checked his phone as it buzzed in his pocket. She flew in today, Kavi said calmly. She wouldn't miss this for the world. In fact, she's just arrived. Kavi gave a small nod to his grandfather. Excuse me. I'll go escort her and myself. He walked away, leaving a vacuum of silence behind him. The crowd began to murmur. Everyone wanted to see the woman who had tamed the rogue alpha. Ziva leaned closer to the patriarch. I've planned a private dinner for us next week, grandfather. Kalila would love to see you. She's been asking about her great-grandfather. The old man didn't even look at her. His attention was fixed on the grand entrance at the far end of the hall. His eyes went wide. His hand gripped his cane tighter. Carmel followed his gaze. His heart stopped. The woman walking through the doors wasn't a stranger. She wore a sleek, silver dress that moved like liquid against her skin. Her dark hair was styled in elegant waves. She looked more powerful and more beautiful than the day she had left. Liora? The name was a ghost of a sound from the patriarch's lips. Carmel felt the air leave his lungs. It was his ex-wife. The woman he had cast aside. She looked at the crowd with a poised, steady expression. What the hell is she doing here? Ziva hissed. But Carmel couldn't hear her. He was looking at the small boy standing by Liora's side. The boy was about 3 years old. He had dark hair and a face that felt like looking into a mirror of the past. The boy let go of Liora's hand. He looked around the massive hall, his eyes bright with excitement. Suddenly, his face lit up. Daddy, the boy shouted. The high-pitched voice echoed off the vaulted ceilings. Every guest turned. Carmel felt a surge of something primal in his chest. His wolf paced behind his ribs, restless and confused. The boy started running. He headed straight toward the center of the room. Carmel stood frozen. He couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. Was it possible? Had she kept this from him? The boy ran faster. He neared Carmel, his small shoes clicking on the floor. Carmel started to reach out a hand, his heart hammering against his teeth. The boy didn't even look at him. The child sprinted right past Carmel. He didn't stop until he reached the man standing 5 feet behind him. Kavi knelt down and caught the boy in a hug, lifting him effortlessly into the air. The boy laughed and tucked his head into Kavi's shoulder. Liora walked up and stood beside Kavi, her hand resting naturally on his arm. Kavi looked over the boy's shoulder at Carmel. A slow, victor's smile finally touched his lips. I believe you remember my wife, Kavi said. You look like you've seen a ghost, Carmel, Kavi said, his voice smooth as silk. Liora felt the weight of Kavi's arm settle firmly around her waist. It was a silent claim, a heavy gold brand in front of the entire ballroom. She forced her lips into a perfect, practiced smile, the kind she had rehearsed in front of her bedroom mirror for 3 years. Across from them, Carmel Elon looked as if someone had drained the blood from his face. His mouth hung open. Next to him, Ziva clutched her champagne glass so hard her knuckles turned white. The elite crowd of Tura went silent, the clinking of silverware replaced by a thick, suffocating tension. Liora? Carmel choked out the name like it was a curse. It's good to see you, Carmel, Liora replied. Her voice didn't tremble. She was proud of that. Though I see your manners haven't improved. Kavi let out a low, dark chuckle. He shifted Joel, who was perched on his hip, and ruffled the boy's messy black hair. Joel beamed, his eyes, so much like the man holding him, crinkling with pure, innocent joy. "Grandfather," Kavi said, turning his attention to the patriarch of the Elon family. "I believe you haven't met my wife, Liora. Or our son, Joel." The elder Elon stepped forward, his cane clicking against the polished marble floor. He ignored the gasps of the guests and the frozen statues of his other grandsons. He peered at Joel, then back at Liora. "A Elon heir," the old man whispered. A slow, toothy grin spread across his face. "And a spirited one at that." "The old man is staring, Daddy," Joel chirped, pointing a finger at his great-grandfather. The room held its breath. Kavi's face went stiff with shock. Liora bit the inside of her cheek to keep from laughing out loud. The silence stretched until the elder Elon erupted into a booming laugh that shook his chest. "He has your bite, Kavi," the old man roared. He reached out and scooped Joel from Kavi's arms. "Come here, boy. Let's see if you have the stomach for a real conversation." As the grandfather marched off with the boy, the crowd began to murmur. The scandal was the best entertainment Tura had seen in a decade. Liora watched them go, her heart squeezing with a mix of triumph and terror. She had spent years as an outcast, banished by the man now standing 2 feet away with a shattered expression. Kavi leaned in close to her ear. "You're doing beautifully," he whispered. His breath was warm, but his eyes remained sharp, scanning the room like a predator. "I want my son back," Liora murmured, her smile never fading for the benefit of the cameras. "Soon," Kavi promised. "But first, we finish the dance." 30 minutes later, the walls of the Adina Hotel felt like they were closing in. Liora slipped away from the bright lights and the suffocating perfume of the gala, finding a stone bench in the darkened courtyard. The air was crisp, smelling of rain and expensive hedges. She leaned her head back and closed her eyes. It was hard to reconcile the man she lived with, the one who owned this massive, glittering hotel, with the rogue biker the world thought he was. Kavi Elon was a man of shadows, and she was starting to realize she didn't know half of them. Liora. She didn't need to open her eyes to recognize the voice. It wasn't Kavi. "Jaren," she said, looking up. Carmel's beta stood over her, his expression unreadable. "Carmel wants to see you," Jaren said. He didn't ask. He stated it like an order. Liora stood up, smoothing the silk of her dress. "I'm sure he does. Tell him if he wants to talk, he can find me at my husband's side. I don't take meetings in the dark anymore." She tried to brush past him, but Jaren stepped into her path. He didn't touch her, but his presence was a wall. "He says it's important. For old times' sake." "There is no such thing as old times," Liora hissed. "Move." She didn't wait for him to respond. She turned on her heel and walked away, her heels clicking aggressively against the stone. Her pulse was racing. She needed to find Kavi. She needed to find Joel and get out of this den of vipers. As she rounded a corner into a dim service hallway, a hand shot out from a doorway. Before she could scream, she was pulled into a darkened office. The door clicked shut, locking out the noise of the party. "Kavi," she gasped, her back hitting the solid wood of a heavy desk. The scent of leather and expensive cologne filled her lungs. Kavi didn't answer with words. He hoisted her up, seating her on the edge of the desk. The wood was freezing against her skin, a sharp contrast to the heat radiating from him. He stepped between her knees, his hands gripping the edge of the desk on either side of her. In the sliver of light coming from the hallway, his eyes looked wild. "What are you doing?" Liora asked, her voice a breathless whisper. "We need to get back." "He thinks you'll run," Kavi growled. His voice was a low, animalistic rumble. "He told me to my face that you're just waiting for a signal to crawl back to him." Leora's breath hitched. "I would never." "Prove it," Kavi said. He leaned in, his face inches from hers. 3 years, Liora. 3 years of playing house. 3 years of sleeping in separate rooms while the world whispered behind our backs. His hand moved, fingers grazing the hem of her dress. Liora felt a spark of heat follow his touch. This wasn't the distant, cold husband she knew. This was something else. This was the man who had built an empire out of spite. "Is this a game to you?" she asked, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Everything is a game," Kavi muttered. He leaned down, his lips brushing against her neck. "But this part? This part is real." He didn't wait for her to agree. He claimed her mouth in a kiss that was more of a conquest than a gesture of affection. It was fierce, demanding, and stripped away the last of her defenses. Liora's fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer. The air in the room grew heavy and hot. Kavi's hands were everywhere, urgent and possessive. He tugged at the fabric of her dress, his movements efficient and focused. When he pulled away to look at her, his expression was one of dark hunger. "Say it," he commanded, his voice ragged. "Say who you belong to." Liora looked up at him, her vision blurred by the intensity of the moment. "I'm yours, Kavi." He let out a low groan, burying his face against her. Liora arched her back, her eyes fluttering shut as a wave of heat crashed over her. She felt the world outside the room vanish, until she heard the soft, distinct creak of the door. Her eyes snapped open. Through the crack in the door, in the shadows of the hallway, a figure stood perfectly still. It was Carmel. He was watching. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated agony, but he didn't turn away. He watched as his brother laid claim to the woman he had once thrown away. Liora froze, her gaze locked with Carmel's. She realized then that Kavi hadn't closed the door all the way. He had left it open just enough. This wasn't just a moment of passion, it was a performance. Kavi didn't stop. He didn't even look back. He knew exactly who was standing in that hallway. He wanted Carmel to see every second of it. Liora felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with the cold air. She realized the depth of Kavi's cruelty. He had used her body and her heart to deliver the final blow to his brother. "Look at me, Liora," Kavi whispered, forcing her to break eye contact with the man in the hall. "You planned this," she breathed. "Are you going to say something?" Liora asked, her voice barely a whisper. The office was dead silent. Kavi didn't answer. He adjusted his cufflinks, his expression as cold as the marble desk Liora sat upon. He didn't look back. He simply walked out the door. A moment later, Carmel's footsteps followed, leaving Liora alone in the dim light. She sat there for a long time. Her skin still tingled from Kavi's touch. He had used her. He had tasted her and driven her to a peak that made her toes curl, but it wasn't about passion. It was about power. He did it to humiliate Carmel. He did it to mark his territory. Now, he was gone, and the silence felt heavier than the noise. Liora gripped the edge of the desk. Her knuckles turned white. A familiar, sick feeling twisted in her stomach. It was the same nausea she felt years ago. She remembered waiting for Carmel to come home. She remembered brushing the lint off his expensive coats while smelling perfume that didn't belong to her. She remembered the way he smiled when he told her he was going to be a father with another woman. That feeling was back. It was raw, bitter humiliation. "I have to get out of here," she muttered to the empty room. She wanted to grab Joel and run. She wanted to go somewhere the Elon name couldn't reach them. But she knew the rules. She had signed the contract. Breaking her word to Kavi didn't just mean a lawsuit. He had made it clear that it meant her ruin. Liora stood up on shaky legs. She took a deep breath and forced the tears back. She refused to cry over another man with that last name. They didn't deserve her grief. She smoothed out her dress and fixed her hair in the mirror. She reapplied her lipstick with a steady hand. By the time she walked back into the gala, she looked like the perfect wife again. The ballroom was full of the drone of a shareholder's speech. Liora spotted grandfather Elon at the head table. Joel was fast asleep in the old man's lap. The sight made the knot in her stomach loosen just a little. As she approached, Kavi stood up. He didn't look at her face. He just pulled out her chair in a stiff, robotic motion. He sat down and fixed his gaze on the stage as if nothing had happened in the office. Liora, dear girl, grandfather Elon whispered. Kavi told me you weren't feeling well. Liora glanced at Kavi. So that was his cover story. She wondered what lie Carmel had told Ziva. She looked across the table and caught Carmel's eyes. He was staring at her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. There was anger in his expression. Maybe even disappointment. Liora didn't care. She looked away. Suddenly, Kavi's hand settled on her lap under the table. His touch was warm, a sharp contrast to his cold demeanor. Liora stiffened but didn't pull away. It was a long flight, Liora murmured to the grandfather. Joel and I are still adjusting. The old man nodded. Then we should wrap this up. My grandson needs his bed. He stood up, still holding the sleeping boy. Liora reached out to take Joel, but the patriarch shook his head. You kept this boy hidden for too long, Liora, he said with a small smile. I'm not giving him up yet. If I do, you might disappear for another 3 years. He carried Joel up to the stage to give the closing remarks. The crowd cheered. Kavi stood up and offered his hand to Liora. She took it, putting on a bright, practiced smile. She looked like a woman glowing with pride. In reality, she felt like she was acting in a play she hated. She could feel Ziva's glare from across the room, but she ignored it. She had spent 3 years perfecting this mask. The applause echoed in the hall as the family stood together. To the world, they were the powerful Elons, reunited and stronger than ever. To Liora, they were a cage. The ride home was even worse. The interior of the luxury car felt small. The seatbelt felt like a chain across her chest. Kavi sat in the corner, staring out the window. He hadn't said a single word since they left the building. He didn't ask if she was okay. He didn't mention the office. Liora watched the city lights flicker by. The silence was suffocating. She thought about how little had changed. 3 years ago, she signed a contract because she was desperate. Now, she was back in the middle of the same drama that had broken her the first time. The memories of Carmel and Ziva began to flood her mind. Every lie and every moment of betrayal felt fresh again. The nausea returned, stronger this time. Her throat tightened. She felt like the walls of the car were closing in. Stop the car, Barak, she whispered to the driver. Kavi didn't even turn his head. No, he said flatly. Liora's hands began to shake. She fumbled with the seatbelt. Kavi, please. Stop the car. Kavi finally looked at her. He saw the paleness of her face and the way she was gasping for air. He gave a short, annoyed grunt and nodded to the driver. As soon as the car jerked to a halt, Liora threw the door open. She stumbled out onto the curb and doubled over. She gripped a cold lamp post as her stomach turned. Kavi stepped out of the car. He didn't come to help her. He just leaned against the door, watching her with a bored expression. A familiar sight, Kavi muttered. Liora didn't look up. She knew what he was thinking. He thought she was weak. He thought she was pathetic. She had spent 3 years trying to become someone else, but standing there on the side of the road, she felt like the same broken girl he had found years ago. Are you done yet? Kavi asked. Liora wiped her mouth and stood up slowly. She tucked a stray hair behind her ear and looked him right in the eye. I'm never done, Liora said. Stay right there, Kavi said. His voice was like ice. He didn't look at Liora as he killed the engine. Instead, his hands stayed locked on the steering wheel, his knuckles white against the leather. He had been checking his watch every 30 seconds since they left the gala. It was clear he couldn't wait to be rid of her. Liora felt the same way. She shifted in the leather seat, adjusting the heavy designer jacket draped over Joel. The boy was fast asleep in her lap, oblivious to the thick tension filling the car. She should have been the one fuming after the disaster at the gala, but Kavi had beaten her to it. He had gone from cold silence to a simmering rage that felt like a physical weight in the small space. She wondered if Carmel had said something to him. Or maybe this was just Kavi being himself. He was a Elon, after all. Mood swings were part of the bloodline. Joel stirred, blinking his large eyes open. Liora forced a small, genuine smile. Her anger faded the moment she looked at him. The night air through the cracked window was sharp, so she tucked Kavi's jacket tighter around the boy's shoulders. Joel didn't mind the oversized fabric. He had been acting like the jacket was a superhero cape ever since Kavi put it on him. Liora watched the way Kavi's jaw tightened. She still couldn't tell if his kindness toward Joel was real or just another layer of the game. That was the problem with Kavi. He was a man made of glass walls and iron doors. You could see him, but you could never truly know what was happening inside. For now, it didn't matter. She had signed the papers. She was his pawn, willing or not. The car slowed as they pulled into the driveway of Kavi's new mansion. He had moved his operations to Tura weeks ago, preparing for the merger of Maisel Incorporated. The house wasn't a sprawling estate like the ones the Elon family usually owned in Ramat, but it felt just as empty. It was moderate, modern, and completely soulless. Mora, the housekeeper, was already standing on the porch under the yellow glow of the lights. Kavi stepped out of the car and walked around to the passenger side. He opened the door and reached for Joel. Mora will take you inside first, Kavi told the boy, his voice softening just a fraction. We will join you in a few minutes, okay? Joel nodded sleepily, reaching out for Kavi. Liora stayed silent as Kavi lifted the boy and walked him over to Mora. He whispered a few quick instructions to the housekeeper before turning back. Barak, the driver, took that as his cue to disappear toward the servants' quarters. Suddenly, it was just the two of them in the dark. Kavi climbed back into the car, slamming the door. The sound echoed in the quiet driveway. Liora, he growled. The name sounded like a threat. Do you have any idea what you did wrong tonight? Liora frowned. She replayed the entire gala in her head. She had walked where he told her to walk. She had smiled when he told her to smile. I did everything you asked, Kavi. What are you talking about? You hesitated, he snapped. He lunged across the center console. Liora gasped and tried to shrink back, but his hand was faster. He caught her by the waist, pulling her forward until her face was inches from his. She could smell the sharp scent of his mint gum and the faint trail of expensive champagne. Tell me the truth, Kavi whispered, his eyes boring into hers. Now that you have seen him again, are you having second thoughts? Liora felt her hands begin to shake. She balled them into fists against her skirt to hide the tremor. Kavi looked like a man who could see through skin and bone. He was looking for a lie, and she knew better than to give him one. I gave you my word, Liora said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. You can choose to trust me or not. But we are in this together now. Kavi didn't move. He searched her eyes for what felt like an eternity. Finally, the tension in his shoulders dropped. He didn't let go of her waist, but the grip became less of a cage and more of a hold. We will have no more hesitation going forward, Kavi said. His eyes were dark and flat. You knew the deal. You signed the contract. Now, I expect you to play your part perfectly. He leaned in closer, his lips brushing against her ear. If I find out you still have feelings for that man, I will cut them out of you myself. Do not test me, Liora. That isn't a threat. It is a promise. Liora didn't doubt him for a second. In the world of the Elons, promises were more dangerous than debts. Go inside, Kavi muttered, finally releasing her. Before I decide to teach you a lesson about crying over other men in my presence. Liora didn't wait for a second invitation. She scrambled out of the car and hurried toward the front door. The chilly air bit at her skin, but the coldness inside the house was worse. She moved quickly through the foyer, following the layout she had memorized during her brief tour earlier that morning. She followed the scent of lavender bath bombs down the hallway to the nursery suite. Inside the bathroom, she found Joel splashing in a tub full of bubbles while Maura checked the water temperature. "Mommy?" Joel's face lit up. "I'm here, baby." Liora walked over and gave him a quick kiss on the forehead before looking at Maura. "He is just about finished, ma'am," Maura said with a polite nod. "Thank you, Maura." "I can take it from here," Liora said. "Thank you, Maury," Joel shouted, waving a soapy hand. The housekeeper smiled and slipped out of the room, closing the door softly. Liora sat on the edge of the tub, watching her son. He looked so much like his father, yet he had none of the bitterness that poisoned the men in this town. "We have to be quick, Joel," Liora said, rubbing a bit of soap off his nose. "It is way past your bedtime. Tomorrow is your first day of school. We don't want to be late, right?" "No," Joel said, rubbing his eyes. He looked up at her with a hopeful expression. "Will Daddy take me? I want Daddy to go." Liora paused, her hand hovering over the washcloth. She thought about the man in the car, the man who had just threatened to ruin her if she stepped out of line. "We will have to ask him in the morning, okay?" Joel nodded slowly, his eyes dropping to the bubbles. "Are you and Daddy fighting?" Leora's heart sank. Even a child could feel the electricity in the air. She forced a bright, fake smile and reached for a towel. "You will catch a cold if you stay in that water any longer. Then you'll be cranky." Joel giggled as she hauled him out of the tub. "Not true. Mommy is the cranky one." "Is that so?" Liora laughed, wrapping him in the warm towel and carrying him to the changing table. She dressed him in his favorite pajamas and tucked him into the high thread count sheets of his new bed. As she kissed him goodnight, she looked toward the door. She didn't know what the morning would bring, but she knew one thing for certain. "Go to sleep, Joel," she whispered. "Everything is going to be fine." "You look like you've seen a ghost, Liora," Sila said, his voice dropping to a low rumble as she stepped away from the car. Liora didn't answer. She only clutched her skirts and hurried toward the front door of their home. The fabric of her dress swished against the gravel, a frantic sound that matched her quick breathing. Sila watched her until the door clicked shut, leaving him in the heavy silence of the back seat. He leaned back and let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His jaw ached from clenching it so tight. The air in the car still smelled like her perfume, sweet, floral, and dangerous. He could still feel the phantom warmth of her waist under his hands. She was soft in all the right places, and for a moment at the gala, she had fit against him like she belonged there. Sila looked at his hands. His fingers twitched against his thighs. He hated how much he wanted her. It wasn't the kind of feeling people wrote songs about. It wasn't love. Sila didn't believe in that. This was something darker. It was a need to possess, to break through that silent wall of defiance she built around herself. She acted like a sweet, innocent wife, but Sila saw the truth in her eyes. He saw the flash of hate when he spoke to her. He saw the way she bit her tongue to keep from screaming at him. She was a rebel playing the part of a doll. "I'm going to find out what you're hiding, Liora," he whispered to the empty car. "And then I'm going to get you out of my system for good." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of silk. It was a scrap of her clothing he had taken earlier. It was still warm. He closed his eyes, inhaling the scent. She was intoxicating. She was a distraction he couldn't afford, yet he couldn't stop thinking about the way she gasped when he leaned close. He wanted to hear that sound again, but he wanted her to mean it. He wanted her to say his name and nothing else. The car door opened, snapping Sila back to reality. Barak, his driver and second-in-command, climbed into the front seat. Barak didn't say anything at first. He had stood a respectful distance away to give Sila and his wife privacy, but Sila knew Barak saw everything. Barak was the only one who knew how much Liora actually affected him. "Where to, sir?" Barak asked, looking at Sela through the rearview mirror. Sela stared out the window at the dark house. You know where. The drive took nearly an hour. They pulled into the back lot of a place called Kana. To the rest of the city, it was the most exclusive VIP nightclub in Tura. It was where the rich and famous went to disappear. But Sela knew the truth. Beneath the pulsing lights and expensive champagne, Kana was a sanctuary for people like him. It was a place where they could drop the corporate masks and be the predators they truly were. His company, Maisel Incorporated, was a clean, corporate empire now. But the money still flowed from the dark corners of places like this. A massive guard named Jiva stood by the staff entrance. He was a man Sela had saved years ago during a bloody territory dispute. Jiva bowed his head as Sela approached. Welcome back, Alpha, Jiva said. Sela nodded and walked past him into the dimly lit hallway. The thumping bass of the music was muffled here. This part of the building was reserved for his private office and the elevator that led to the basement. Is Chiron here? Sela asked. Barak handed Sela a fresh coat to replace the one he had left behind. He's waiting, in a sense. Sela raised an eyebrow as he slid into the coat and buttoned the front. In a sense? What does that mean? I heard he got bored, Barak said with a small shrug. He hopped into the ring. Sela chuckled. It sounded like Chiron. His third-in-command was a man covered in tattoos who lived in leather jackets and had a buzz cut. He was an outlaw who didn't understand the concept of waiting. He was the polar opposite of Barak. Barak was calm, level-headed, and dressed in a sharp suit. He had transitioned from a rough life to being a personal secretary without breaking a sweat. Most people underestimated Barak because he was quiet, but Sela knew better. Barak was a lion in a silk tie. He had only ever lost one fight in the underground ring, and he had lost it to Sela. They reached the private elevator. There was only one button on the panel. It led straight down to the fight den. Sela felt the familiar hum of the machine as it began to descend. The smell of sweat, iron, and adrenaline began to seep through the vents. This was where Sela belonged. Not at a gala, and certainly not chasing a woman who hated him. Down here, everything was simple. You fought until someone gave up, or until they couldn't stand. Let's see if he's actually winning for once, Sela said. The elevator doors slid open. The roar of the crowd hit them like a physical wave. In the center of the room, surrounded by a chain-link cage, Chiron was currently throwing a punch that looked like it could break a brick wall. Sela stepped out of the elevator, his eyes scanning the room. He needed to hit something. He needed to forget the smell of Liora's perfume and the look of defiance in her eyes. Barak, get the gloves ready, Sela commanded. 3 minutes, Chiron, Kavi says as he checks his watch. I am not waiting a single second longer. The elevator doors hiss open, and the raw energy of the underground fight den slams into him. It is a thick wall of noise and heavy scents. Kavi steps out, his boots clicking against the polished concrete. He breathes in the familiar mix of expensive leather, aged wine, and the metallic tang of fresh blood. In the center of the massive hall, the crowd is already screaming. A rhythmic chant shakes the light fixtures overhead. Den Wolf. Den Wolf. Den Wolf. Kavi ignores the noise and moves toward the elevated guest tables. This place is built for the elite. The seating rises in tiers, ensuring every wealthy rogue and high-ranking pack member has a clear view of the violence below. Down in the ring, Chiron stands tall. He is a retired champion, a legend of this pit, and he looks right at home. He wears a wide, predatory grin as he sizes up the new generation of fighters. To Chiron, this isn't a job. It is a playground. Kavi reaches his reserve table. Chiron's leather jacket is already tossed over the back of the couch. Kavi sits, and a waiter immediately places a dark amber drink in front of him. He takes a slow sip, his eyes never leaving the ring. A loud bang echoes through the hall as the referee fires the starting gun. Chiron moves like a blur. He lunges before his opponent can even raise his guard. The younger fighter is strong, but Chiron has a decade of survival behind his fists. It isn't a fight, it is a lesson. In less than 90 seconds, Chiron has the new champion pinned to the mat. The boy isn't moving. The crowd erupts. They want more. They want Chiron to finish it with something permanent. Instead, Chiron lets go. He stands up and grabs a damp towel from the corner of the ring. He wipes the blood from his knuckles with a bored expression. Humiliating a defeated man is for amateurs. Kavi. Chiron calls out. He jogs over to the table, still breathing hard. You have to let me go back to Remat. These local Tura boys have gone soft. Alpha, Barak interrupts, his voice tight with correction. Chiron chuckles and bows his head slightly toward Kavi. He slides into the seat across from them, his playful mood vanishing instantly. He leans in close so the surrounding tables can't overhear. How did the search go? Barak asks. Chiron shakes his head. I am sorry, Alpha. We hit every rogue camp in Ramat. There is no sign of them. It is like the ghosts from 10 years ago stayed dead. Kavi feels his jaw tighten. His hands curl into fists under the table. 10 years. He has spent a decade hunting the monsters who tore the Elon pack apart. The trail led to Ramat 3 years ago, but now it has gone cold again. 4 of them made it out of the Elon woods alive, Barak says, his voice a low growl. They didn't just vanish into thin air. People leave tracks. Families. Paper trails. Chiron nods and looks at Kavi. The top packs are getting aggressive with their boarders. They are scouting skilled rogues to act as muscle. If those 4 are as good as we think, they might have been absorbed into a legitimate pack by now. Kavi narrows his eyes. That would make them much harder to kill. I will look into the recruitment records, Chiron promises. A booming, arrogant voice cuts through their private conversation. It is loud enough to stop the music at the nearby bar. Well, if it isn't the outcast himself. Kavi Elon. Chiron is on his feet in a heartbeat. His hands are balled into fists, his eyes locked on the newcomer. Kavi doesn't bother to turn around. He knows that voice. It belongs to a man who has spent his entire life trying to step out of Kavi's shadow. Alpha Malik Karen struts toward the table. He is the leader of the Karen pack, the second strongest in the region. He has 3 bodyguards trailing behind him like shadows. Malik stops at the edge of the table and extends a hand, a smug smirk plastered on his face. Congratulations on getting back into the family, Kavi, Malik says. I was worried I wouldn't get to break you myself after I finish with your brother. Kavi doesn't look at the hand. He reaches for his glass and takes a slow, deliberate sip of his drink. He lets the silence stretch until the smirk on Malik's face begins to twitch. Malik lets out a low, animalistic growl. He pulls his hand back, his eyes darkening with fury. I thought you still had some class, Malik sneers. But I guess living like a dog changed you. Tell me, is it true what they say? Are you really sleeping with your own brother's wife? The air in the room turns freezing. The smirk on Kavi's face vanishes. The mention of Liora's name feels like a physical strike to his chest. His blood turns to ice, then boils over into a white-hot rage. Kavi's hand moves with a speed that defies the human eye. In one fluid motion, he reaches into his holster and levels his weapon at Malik's chest. Say her name again, Kavi whispers. Sit down and watch, or get out, Kavi muttered, his voice cutting through the humid air of the fight den. Bang! The gunshot shattered the heavy atmosphere. A sudden, ringing silence swallowed the roar of the crowd. The 2 fighters in the ring froze mid-swing. Every head turned toward the VIP section. Kavi sat back in his leather chair, his arms still outstretched. A thin, gray curl of smoke drifted from the barrel of his pistol. He watched the scene play out like it was happening in slow motion. Malik's face was a masterpiece of shifting expressions. First, his smug grin twisted into confusion. Then, his eyes dropped to the gun. Finally, he looked down at his own leg. A dark, wet stain bloomed across his expensive suit trousers. Crimson liquid pooled on the floor, soaking into the rug. A jagged scream ripped from Malik's throat. He collapsed, clutching his thigh as blood leaked through his fingers. "You shot me." Malik howled, his face turning a sickly shade of white. "You actually shot me." Kavi didn't flinch. He watched the Bama Alpha squirm with a cold, detached interest. Malik's bodyguards finally snapped out of their shock. They snarled, their eyes glowing with predatory light as they lunged toward the table. They didn't get far. Barak and Kyron moved like blurred shadows. With a few heavy thuds and the sound of cracking bone, both guards were pinned to the floor before they could even reach the table. Kavi picked up his glass and took a slow, calm sip. Malik was curled in a ball now, sobbing like a child. "You bastard." Malik choked out. "This is war, Elon. Do you hear me? War." Kavi let out a soft, dry chuckle. "War? Our packs have been trying to kill each other since before we were born, Malik. You're going to have to come up with a better threat than that." "I'll kill you," Malik hissed, shaking with a mix of rage and shock. "I won't let you get away with this." Kavi set his glass down and stood up. He walked over to the wounded man, his boots clicking softly on the concrete. He looked down at Malik, tapping the barrel of the gun against his own chin. "Do I look like a man who needs your permission?" Kavi asked. "The Elon pack likes to play politics. They like peace treaties and handshakes. But me? I have no problem erasing your pack from the map and taking your businesses for myself." Kavi leaned down, looming over Malik. The wounded Alpha tried to crawl backward, but he hit the base of the sofa. "Don't come closer." Malik gasped. "My father, he'll make you pay." Kavi scoffed. "You aren't the first Alpha I've put a bullet in, and you won't be the last. I've walked away every single time." He crouched low, pressing the cold metal of the gun barrel against Malik's cheek. The man's breath hitched. "Did your father never teach you how to speak to a lady?" Kavi's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Let me make the rules very clear so there's no confusion. If you ever say her name again, you die. If you think about her, you die. If you even walk down the same side of the street as her, I will find you." Kavi's eyes narrowed, boring into Malik's soul. "Do we have an understanding?" Malik nodded frantically, his lips trembling. "Good boy." Kavi stood up and slid the gun back into its holster. "You've been stepping onto my turf for months, Malik. You thought I wouldn't notice because I was gone. But I'm back now. I don't negotiate, and I don't do trilogies. If your wolves cross my line again, you'll never find their bodies." Kavi paused, waiting for the words. "Are we clear?" Malik glared at the floor, his jaw tight. "I need to hear the words, Malik," Kavi said, his voice flat and hard. "I get it." Malik spat, wincing as he moved his leg. "We're clear." Kavi shrugged as if the whole ordeal was a minor inconvenience. "We'll see. I almost hope you try me. It's been a boring week." Kavi walked back to the table and finished his drink. Barak stepped forward, placing a heavy briefcase on the table and flicking the latches open. It was filled with neat rows of $100 bills. Kavi grabbed 2 thick bundles of cash and tossed them onto Malik's chest. The money got soaked in blood instantly. "I hear surgery is pricey these days," Kavi said. He adjusted his jacket and started toward the exit. He paused for a second, looking back over his shoulder with a sharp, mocking smile. "By the way, Malky? It really was great catching up." Kavi didn't wait for a reply. He walked through the den, ignoring the stares of the wealthy men and criminals lining the walls. He wasn't worried about the police. Everyone in the building had signed a strict non-disclosure agreement. In this den, the only law was Kavi's law. If anyone talked, they'd be admitting to their own crimes. He stepped into the elevator with Barak and Kyron. When the doors opened to the cool night air outside the Kana Club, Kavi took a long, deep breath. The valet pulled the black SUV around to the curb. "So," Barack said, leaning against the car door. "Should I add, don't mention Liora, to the official club rules, or was that a one-time thing?" Kavi shot him a look that could have frozen fire. Barack quickly held up his hands in retreat. "Right. No more shooting people today." "Got it," Barack muttered. Barack hopped into the driver's seat and pulled the car out onto the main road. The city lights blurred past the windows. "Did that help?" Barack asked, watching Kavi through the rearview mirror. "Did you get the frustration out of your system?" Kavi sank back into the plush leather seat. He closed his eyes and inhaled. Even now, the interior of the car carried a faint, lingering scent of jasmine and vanilla. "She won't leave my head, Barack," Kavi whispered to the empty air. "What did we say about making a mess at breakfast?" Liora asked with a soft laugh. Joel didn't answer. He was too busy shoveling another forkful of syrup-soaked waffles into his mouth. A thick, golden glob of maple syrup escaped his lips and rolled down his chin. He stuck his tongue out, trying to catch it, but only managed to smear it across his cheek. "You're going to lure every ant in the city all the way to your kindergarten class," Liora teased. She grabbed a wet wipe and held it out. Joel's eyes went wide. He grabbed the wipe and started scrubbing his face with more energy than accuracy. Liora watched him, her heart felt light for the first time in days. The sun streamed through the kitchen blinds, lighting up the black marble of the island. The house smelled like fresh coffee and toasted sugar. For a second, it felt like a normal morning. "Do you need some help there, little man?" The voice was deep and familiar. Liora froze. Her smile didn't just fade, it turned to ice. She didn't have to turn around to know who was standing in the doorway. "Daddy!" Joel squealed. Kavi walked into the kitchen. He looked relaxed, almost soft. He crouched down and ruffled Joel's hair. "Hey, buddy," Kavi said. He had a small, genuine smile on his lips. "Is this the big first day of school without me?" "Mommy said Daddy busy," Joel shouted. He started giggling and squirming, trying to dodge Kavi's tickling hands. He almost knocked his plate onto the floor in the chaos. Liora stood still, her hands gripped tight against the marble counter. She felt like she was watching a movie of a different family. This Kavi, the one who laughed and played, was a stranger to her. But she knew he had always been this way with the boy. For 3 years, even when he was a world away, Kavi never missed a birthday or a doctor's visit. He was the perfect father. He had kept every single promise in their contract. That was the problem. He was so good at his role that Liora felt trapped by her own gratitude. She owed him everything. "You're going to get syrup on your expensive shirt," Liora said. Her voice was flat. Kavi stopped playing. He stood up and turned his gaze toward her. The warmth in his eyes didn't fully disappear, but it changed. It became sharper. Liora looked away immediately. "Joel, Mora is waiting for you upstairs," Kavi told the boy. His tone was fond, but firm. "Go get changed. I'll be the one to drop you off today." Joel cheered and ran out of the kitchen, his little feet thumping loudly against the hardwood floors. As soon as the sound faded, the silence in the kitchen became heavy. Liora started stacking the dirty plates just to have something to do with her hands. "Chef Ron knows exactly what Joel likes to eat," Kavi said. The playfulness was gone. His voice was cool and professional again. "There is no need for you to be in here cooking." "I know that," Liora replied. She kept her back to him. "If the nanny isn't doing enough, I will hire more staff," Kavi continued. "You don't need to do chores." "I don't think that's necessary. Do you think I made you my wife so you could play house?" Kavi's voice was suddenly very close. Liora felt the air leave her lungs. She didn't move as Kavi stepped up behind her. He placed his hands on the marble counter, one on each side of her body. He didn't touch her, but he didn't have to. He had her caged against the island. The daddy from a minute ago was gone. This was the man she had sold her soul to. I didn't marry you so you could tend to a home like you did for Carmel, Kavi hissed. His warm breath brushed against the back of her neck, making her skin crawl. I intend for you to be the most dazzling diamond this city has ever seen. I want you to be the woman everyone desires but no one can touch. I want you to be the one who brings Carmel to his knees at my feet. Liora shivered. The way he said Carmel's name was full of a dark, hungry kind of hate. It terrified her. To Kavi, she wasn't a person or a partner. She was a weapon. She was a trophy to be polished and used against his enemy. That is who you are, Liora, Kavi whispered. He leaned in until his lips brushed the shell of her ear. By the way, Carmel called you 3 times last night. What do you plan to do about that? Leora's heart hammered against her ribs. She had tried to hide the calls, hoping to find the right moment to tell him. She should have known better. Kavi was always watching. I was going to tell you, she whispered. Of course you were, Kavi murmured. He didn't sound convinced. You know what happens when you keep things from me. Liora turned around in the small space he left her. She forced herself to look him in the eyes. I know what you're thinking, but you're wrong. I won't see him, Kavi. I have no reason to ever speak to him again. Kavi stared at her for a long beat. His eyes searched her face, looking for a lie. Finally, he stepped back, giving her room to breathe. The tension didn't disappear, but it lowered to a simmer. My grandfather called, Kavi said, his tone shifting to business. The old man wants to see you. Liora blinked. Grandfather Elon? Why? I don't know, Kavi admitted. He leaned against the counter, looking thoughtful. But be careful. My grandfather is a dangerous man. He is cunning. He might have been polite at the party yesterday, but he favors Carmel. He has fought against my return to this family for years. If he wants a meeting, it isn't for a friendly chat. He'll probably try to dig for information, Liora said. She straightened her shoulders. I can handle it. I know you can, Kavi said. He didn't offer a compliment, he just stated it as a fact. I didn't choose you for your pretty face. Liora felt a spark of annoyance. She couldn't help but roll her eyes. Right. You chose me to be your dazzling diamond. You've made that very clear. But while we are in this house, I am Joel's mother first. That means I make him breakfast when he's scared of a new home. Even if it makes you angry. She reached over and slid a fresh plate of waffles across the counter toward him. As if on cue, Kavi's stomach gave a loud, hungry growl. He looked at the food, then back at her, looking genuinely surprised. And for the record, Liora added, I was never Carmel's maid. I never cooked for him either. There was no need because his mother is a professional chef. So stop comparing me to a past that didn't exist. Kavi just stared at the plate. You're many things, Kavi Elon, but you aren't immortal, Liora said, her voice dropping to a grumble as she walked past him toward the stairs. When was the last time you actually ate a meal? It's been 3 years and you still forget to eat. At this rate, you'll drop dead before you get your revenge. Kavi picked up a fork, his eyes following her. And why would that be a problem for you? Liora paused on the bottom step and looked back over her shoulder. Because if you die, there's no one left to stop me from going back to Carmel, right? You're early, Grandfather Elon said without looking up from his plate. He sliced into a thick cut of steak with surgical precision, the silver knife scraping against the fine china. Liora pulled out a heavy oak chair and sat. The dining hall felt like a tomb, cold and smelling of expensive floor wax and old power. Kavi dropped me off on his way to Joel's kindergarten. It's the boy's first day. The old man offered a sharp hum of approval. He finally set the knife down and fixed his gaze on her. It was the same look he used on political rivals, calculating and heavy. You don't drive, do you? Even back when you were with Carmel, you never touched a steering wheel. Yet, my grandson bought you a new car every single birthday. Liora tightened her grip on her purse, keeping her expression flat. It was a sting she hadn't expected. Carmel had lived with her for 3 years and never noticed her fear of the road, yet the patriarch of the family had seen it from a distance. No. I don't drive. Carmel was never one for details, Grandfather Elon remarked. He took a slow sip of water, his eyes never leaving hers. When he told me about the divorce, it displeased me. I sent men to your home pack to find you. I wanted you brought back. But you never went home. I fulfilled my duty to my pack and to your grandson, Liora said. Her voice didn't tremble. She had spent too many years being the quiet, dutiful Luna. That girl was dead. There was nothing left for me there. I chose to live for myself. The old man leaned forward, the light catching the silver hair at his temples. And that choice led you straight to Kavi? Living for yourself meant marrying the brother of your ex-husband? The question was a trap. Liora knew the rumors. To the outside world, she was a social climber or a weapon being used in a sibling rivalry. We crossed paths the night I was banished from this city. It wasn't a plan. It was survival. The knife paused mid-air. Grandfather Elon tilted his head. The way you say it, one would think being cast out of Tura was the best thing to ever happen to you. It was, Liora replied. Silence stretched between them. A lesser person would have started babbling to fill the void, but Liora remained still. She watched a maid move silently in the corner, adjusting a vase that was already perfectly centered. Everything in this house was controlled. Everything was meant to intimidate. 3 years ago, you were timid, the old man said eventually. He leaned back, crossing his arms over his chest. You were unremarkable as a Luna. You faded into the wallpaper of this pack. But you aren't that girl anymore. You aren't the girl who married Carmel. No, Liora said. I'm not. I find myself wondering, he mused, his voice dropping to a low growl. Did Kavi mold this version of you? Or was Carmel simply too blind to see what was hidden beneath the surface? Liora met his stare head-on. Does it matter? A flicker of genuine amusement crossed the old man's face, a rare sight. He chuckled, though the sound lacked any warmth. When I first heard the news, I thought Kavi married you just to spite his brother. I thought you were a tool for his revenge. But looking at you now, perhaps he actually outsmarted Carmel for once. I am not a pawn to be moved between them, Liora murmured. Grandfather Elon's smile widened, revealing a hint of the predator that had built the Elon empire from nothing. That is exactly what a pawn would say, my dear. He stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the marble floor. But remember this, in this house, I am the one who plays the game. And I will be watching very closely to see which side you're really on. Liora stood as well, her heart drumming against her ribs, though she kept her hands steady. Are we done then? For today, he said, turning his back to her to look out the floor-to-ceiling windows. But tell Kavi I expect him for dinner on Sunday. And bring the boy. I want to see if he has the Elon eyes. Liora walked toward the door, her heels clicking sharply. She reached the threshold before stopping. He has his own eyes, Mr. Elon. He doesn't belong to your pack. The old man didn't turn around. We shall see about that, won't we? You should take that, Grandfather Elon said. He didn't look up from his plate. It could be important. Don't mind me. Liora felt her phone buzz again inside her purse. She didn't move to reach for it. She remembered exactly what Kavi had told her before she walked through these doors. The old man is always testing for flaws. If she answered the phone now, she was showing a lack of control. It is fine, Liora said. She forced a polite smile. I can get to it later. The dining hall fell back into a heavy, suffocating silence. The clink of silverware against porcelain sounded like small gunshots in the empty room. Grandfather Elon took his time. He chewed slowly, his eyes fixed on the table as if Liora weren't even there. Liora kept her back straight. She had spent years in this pack as Carmel's wife, yet she had never once been invited to this private mansion. The pack members used to whisper about it. They said the great Alpha Elon didn't approve of her. They were right. Back then, she only cared about Carmel. She had been blind. It took a messy divorce to realize she had no power in Thornville. Now, things were different. She had Joel to protect. She wasn't going to be a casualty in the war between the Elon brothers. Kavi is a good man, the old man said suddenly. He didn't make it sound like a compliment. It sounded like a diagnosis. Liora stayed quiet. She knew better than to fill the silence with nervous chatter. Kavi was always the quiet one, Grandfather Elon continued. He finally looked up. His eyes were sharp, like a hawk watching a mouse. The free spirit. The radical. He never wanted the spotlight, even when it was his by right. Liora felt a chill. She knew but was coming. Carmel, on the other hand, is the opposite, the old man said. He placed his fork down with a deliberate click. He is loud. He is charming. He is ambitious. They are very different men, Liora said carefully. I saw the boy last night, Grandfather Elon said. His voice was casual, but the air in the room seemed to vanish. Joel. Leora's heart hammered against her ribs. She kept her hands under the table, curling her fingers into her palms so he wouldn't see them shake. She kept her face a mask of calm. The boy has Kavi's eyes, the old man remarked. Liora gave a single, stiff nod. Joel looks a lot like his father. Children are strange, the old man murmured. He leaned back, his gaze drilling into her. They grow into their faces over time. Sometimes, they grow into someone else's face entirely. Liora didn't flinch. She knew what he was implying. 3 years ago, she was still living in Carmel's house. If the math didn't add up, Joel was a scandal waiting to happen. Kavi and I don't worry about the future yet, Liora said. Joel is only 3. Indeed. The old man's voice turned cold. I did not know about Joel until recently. It is odd. A Elon child kept a secret from me. I do not like secrets, Liora. Kavi and I weren't really Elons until recently, Liora countered. She tried to sound bored rather than defensive. We had our own lives. The old man's lip curled into a tiny, ghost of a smile. He liked the bite in her tone. I only ask because blood matters. Especially in a pack like this. It matters to the legacy. And it matters to me. Liora remained silent. She waited for him to get to the point. If Joel is Kavi's son, there are things I must prepare him for, Grandfather Elon said. Things I must pass down. If he is not, then I must continue to prepare Carmel. Liora frowned. Carmel was already the alpha. Why would the old man talk about preparing him unless the position was actually up for grabs? Was he thinking about replacing Carmel with Kavi? Or even Joel? What are you asking me, Mr. Elon? Liora asked. The old man leaned forward. He folded his hands on the table. I am not asking. I am giving you an opportunity. Tell the truth now. Tell it before someone else does. Liora thought of all the people in the pack who hated her. There were dozens who would love to prove Joel was a bastard or a lie. If the truth came out that Joel was Carmel's biological son, Kavi's protection would vanish. They would be trapped. She looked the old man right in the eyes. Joel is Kavi's son, she said. Her voice was firm. Carmel's affairs and the business of the Elon pack are no longer my concern. She wasn't just lying for herself. She was lying for Joel's life. Until her contract with Kavi was over, this was the only truth that allowed them to breathe. Grandfather Elon stared at her for a long time. He seemed to be searching for a flicker of a lie in her pupils. Finally, he leaned back and exhaled. Very well, he said. The tension didn't leave the room, it just changed shape. Then I will keep a very close eye on Kavi. Liora felt a weight drop in her stomach. She had protected Joel's identity, but she had just put a target on Kavi's back. By claiming Joel was the heir to the quiet brother, she had shifted the power balance of the entire family. Is that all? Liora asked. For now, the old man said. He picked up his wine glass but didn't drink. But tell me one thing, Liora. If Carmel finds out you lied, do you think Kavi is strong enough to stop him? You should stay away from public spaces for a while, Grandfather Elon said. Liora stopped near the car and turned back toward the porch. The old man leaned heavily on his cane, his eyes fixed on her with a sharp intensity. He looked like he was weighing her soul. Until the dust settles, he added. That might be best for Joel. Liora felt a cold shiver go down her spine. She nodded slowly, though her mind was racing. Before she could ask what he meant, the old man spoke again. I am counting on you for the anniversary moon gala, he said. He didn't wait for her to answer. He turned and disappeared back into the shadows of the mansion. Liora stood frozen on the gravel driveway. The anniversary gala was the biggest event of the year for the pack. It was where every high-ranking alpha and the werewolf committee members gathered. Traditionally, the Luna of the pack organized everything. That job belonged to Ziva. By giving the task to Liora, the old man wasn't just testing her. He was declaring war between the two women. Liora tightened her grip on her purse. She had come back to Tura to ruin Ziva, and it seemed the opportunity was arriving sooner than she thought. The door is open, Liora, Barak said softly. Liora climbed into the back seat of the black SUV. As soon as the door clicked shut, she let out a long breath. She pulled her phone from her bag and saw a flood of notifications. Her family had been calling non-stop. Her father and cousins clearly knew she was back in town. She swiped through the news alerts, her blood running cold. Kavi had promised to think about withholding the story, but the headlines were already everywhere. Kavi Elon returns with mystery woman. Seductress remarries ex-husband's brother. The words felt like physical blows. The media was painting her as a villain, a woman who had jumped from one brother to the other to keep her claws in the Elon fortune. This was why the old man told her to stay hidden. Kavi was using her as a shield to draw out his enemies. Diamond? More like the most pathetic woman in the city, Liora whispered to herself. A new text popped up on her screen. It was from Kavi. It only had 2 words, come here. Liora stared at the screen. He was likely at the corporate office, surrounded by the very reporters who were currently tearing her reputation apart. She wasn't going to play his game today. She had enough of the Elon family drama to last a lifetime. Drop me off at Ariel Loft, Liora said, looking at Barak in the rearview mirror. Barak slowed the car down slightly. Kavi said he is expecting you at the office. I will take a taxi if you won't drive me, Barak, Liora said. Her voice was calm but firm. I don't care what Kavi said right now. Barak hesitated for a few seconds. He eventually let out a sigh and changed lanes. He knew Liora was serious. The drive to the loft was short. When they arrived, Liora stepped out before Barak could even shift the car into park. She was thankful the paparazzi hadn't tracked her location yet. She just wanted 1 hour of peace. I will be here for a while, Liora told him as she leaned down to the window. You don't have to wait. Mrs. Elon. Just Liora, she interrupted. Barak gripped the steering wheel. Liora, how am I supposed to tell Kavi you walked away? He expects you. Then he should have told me I would be the lead story on every gossip site before he leaked it, Liora replied. She kept her voice low, but the anger was bubbling just under the surface. I won't stop his plans. He can even use my name. But I won't come and go just because he snaps his fingers. She turned and walked into the lobby of the Ariel Loft. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble. This building was one of the few places in the city that the Elon family didn't own. It was her sanctuary. The elevator ride to the penthouse was silent. When the doors opened, the familiar scent of lavender and sandalwood greeted her. The space looked exactly as it had 3 years ago. Large windows let in the afternoon light, making the wood floors shine. Liora walked toward the center of the room, feeling her shoulders finally start to drop. Then, a low voice came from the corner. Liora. Liora froze. Her heart skipped a beat as she slowly turned around. Carmel was leaning against the window frame. His suit jacket was unbuttoned, and his tie was hanging loose around his neck. He looked like he had been waiting for a long time. His eyes were dark and full of questions. Liora forced herself to stay calm. She should have known he would find a way in. This was the one place they used to share away from the pack. "What are you doing here, Carmel?" Liora asked. He pushed off the window and took a step toward her. "You ignored every text I sent. I knew you would come here eventually. I wanted to see you without your new bodyguard around." He looked around the room, his jaw tight. He looked like a man who was struggling to keep his temper under control. "Don't you think you owe me an explanation for all of this?" Carmel asked. "You still have a key to my home?" Liora asks. She stands in the center of her living room. Her hands are tight balls at her sides. The shock of seeing Carmel standing by her window is fading. Now, only a cold, sharp anger remains. It has been 3 years. She thought he had scrubbed every trace of her from his life. "I didn't think you would invite me over," Carmel says. He talks as if breaking into her apartment is a casual favor. "I didn't think you would accept a formal invitation, either." Liora looks at the door. She wonders if Barak, her security, saw him slip inside. If Kavi finds out Carmel is here, the building might not survive the explosion. Kavi is not a man who shares. He is certainly not a man who allows his rivals to trespass. "You cannot just walk in here," Liora says. Her voice is flat. "You do not own this place. You do not own me." Carmel narrows his eyes. He takes a step forward. He looks at her as if she is a puzzle he has already solved. "Why are you with Kavi, Liora? You married him. What is wrong with you?" Liora pulls her arms across her chest. She tilts her head. "We have been divorced for 3 years, Carmel. What I do with my life is none of your business." "Kavi is using you," Carmel snaps. His calm mask is slipping. "He will do anything to hurt me. Don't tell me you are helping him. Don't tell me you are part of his games." "He is my husband," Liora says. She says it slowly. She wants the words to sink in. Carmel laughs. It is a bitter, hollow sound. He shakes his head and shoves his hands into his pockets. He is trying to look confident, but his shoulders are too tense. "I don't believe that. I know you, Liora. I know who you are." He walks toward her. He stops only when he is a few inches away. Liora smells him immediately. It is the same scent from their marriage. Sandalwood and pine. For a second, her heart skips. It is an old habit, a ghost of a feeling she thought she buried. She stays rooted to the floor. She refuses to give him the satisfaction of seeing her run. "I don't believe you love him," Carmel whispers. His voice is thick. "I saw you at the ballroom. I saw your eyes when you looked at me. You missed me. You came back for me." He leans in. Liora can feel the heat of his breath on her skin. Her pulse spikes. Part of it is fear. Most of it is rage. She digs her nails into her palms until it hurts. The pain keeps her focused. "You are making me very uncomfortable, Mr. Elon," Liora says. Her voice is ice. "You are my husband's brother. We are not close enough for you to be in my home. We are barely even strangers." Carmel flinches. The formal name hits him like a physical blow. Mr. Elon? Really, Liora? Do you know how long I looked for you? You vanished. And all this time, you were hiding with my brother? You should leave, Liora says. She points toward the door. Our past is all over the news. Nobody wants to see us together. Go back to your wife. Do you think I care about the news? Carmel asks. He takes another step. He is trying to crowd her space. Kavi is not the man you need. He is dark. He is dangerous. You know that. Liora scoffs. She refuses to back down. What do you know about what I need? You traded me for Ziva. Go home to her. This conversation is boring. Carmel's jaw goes tight. He looks into her eyes, searching for a spark. He looks for the woman who used to cry when he left the room. He finds nothing but a wall of glass. He exhales a long, shaky breath. I am not here to fight, he says. I needed to see you. I needed to understand how you could do this to me. Liora laughs. It is a soft, mean sound. Do what? Move on with my life? Find a man who actually wants me? Don't play games, Carmel says. You are with him for revenge. You want to hurt me. What if I am? Liora asks. She steps closer to him now. She wants him to see the lack of regret in her expression. I am nothing to you. You are nothing to me. We are just two people who used to be intimate. That is all. Carmel looks stunned. He looks like she just slapped him across the face. I thought I had time, he mutters. He sounds like he is talking to himself. I thought you would come back when you were ready. Liora stares at him. He has a wife. He has the life he chose. Why does he look heartbroken? She pushes the thought away. She cannot care about his feelings anymore. I am Kavi's woman now, Liora says. You saw that for yourself. You should get used to it. Carmel recoils. He finally backs away. He looks at her as if she is a stranger. You have changed, Liora. You are not the woman I loved. Neither are you, she says. They stand in silence for a long moment. The air in the room feels heavy. Finally, Carmel turns. He walks to the door without looking back. He slips out as quietly as he arrived. Liora lets out a breath. Her lungs ache. She reaches for her phone to calm her shaking hands. A message is waiting. It is from Kavi. You must have seen my gift by now, the text reads. Liora feels a chill run down her spine. Kavi knows. He knew Carmel was here before she even did. Another message pops up immediately. Come here, Liora. Don't make me come get you myself. You are late, Kavi said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous vibration. He didn't look at the legal team or the row of nervous executives. He kept his eyes locked on the door of his new office. His fingers tapped a steady, impatient rhythm on the leather arm of his swivel chair. He stared at his phone, waiting for a glow that didn't come. The day had started with a victory. He was back in Tura. He had reclaimed his space at Elon Company. But Liora was pushing back. She had refused him this morning, and the rebellion was like a low-grade fever under his skin. He knew she had bite, but he hadn't expected her to snap at his heels so soon. Mr. Elon, a junior executive whispered from the doorway. The tour is finished. Shall I show you to the executive suite? Kavi stood up without answering. He walked through the halls of Elon Company like a wolf reclaiming old territory. The executives trailed behind him, pointing out renovations and new departments. They acted as if he didn't know these hallways better than his own pulse. Finally, they reached the top floor. Carmel moved his personal team to make room for you, the executive said, sweating slightly. Per the partnership agreement. He didn't have a choice, Kavi replied. He stepped into the office. It was cold and sterile. Just how he liked it. He checked his watch. Noon was approaching. The official meeting to finalize the merger between his company, Maisel Incorporated, and the sinking ship of Elon Company was minutes away. Carmel was currently the main topic of every news cycle. Kavi had made sure of that. The divorce scandal was plastered across every digital billboard in the city. It was a gift for his brother's return, the kind of spotlight that burned. Kavi's phone buzzed. It was Barack. Alpha, Barack said. Where is she? Kavi asked. He didn't bother with a greeting. She saw the news. She's not happy, Kavi. Sending Carmel to her apartment while the paparazzi are circling, it's messy. She feels like bait. Kavi leaned against the mahogany desk and looked out at the city skyline. She is bait. Our contract is clear. She helps me dismantle Carmel, and I provide the protection. I don't owe her a happy mood. She might turn on you, Barack warned. They were together for 3 years. There are feelings there. If you push her too hard into a corner with him, she might snap the wrong way. Kavi felt a flicker of irritation. He didn't like the suggestion that he couldn't control his own assets. She knows the price of betrayal, Kavi said. It'll get her here. That's all that matters. He hung up before Barack could argue. He checked his messages again. Liora had read his texts. She hadn't replied. A small, dark smirk touched his lips. If she wanted to play games of silence, he would teach her the rules. A knock at the door broke his thoughts. Mr. Elon, the board is waiting, his lead lawyer said. Your brother has already taken his seat. Kavi straightened his tie in the reflection of the window. Let's go. The boardroom was a tomb of glass and steel. Carmel sat at the head of the long table, looking like a man who hadn't slept in 48 hours. His eyes were bloodshot, and his jaw was set so tight it looked ready to crack. When Kavi walked in, the air in the room turned to ice. The executive stood up. Carmel remained seated. Kavi took the chair directly opposite his brother. He signaled for his team to sit, leaving the chair to his immediate right empty. Mr. Elon, one of the board members stammered, looking between the two brothers. Mr. Kavi Elon, I mean. Are we waiting for someone else? We have a tight schedule. Kavi leaned back, crossing his legs. He looked at the empty chair and then at his brother. We are waiting for my legal advisor. She is running late. Carmel checked his watch and slammed his hand onto the table. I don't have time for this. I have a company to run and a pack of reporters at my gates. If she isn't here, we start without her. You were invited to this meeting, Carmel. I am the one bringing the capital, Kavi said, his voice smooth and cold. If you want the signatures, you will wait. If not, I can leave right now and watch your stock price hit zero by morning. Carmel glared at him, his nostrils flaring. He stayed in his seat. The silence in the room grew heavy. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The executives shifted in their seats, avoiding eye contact. Then, the sound of heels echoed in the hallway. The heavy double doors swung open. Liora walked in. She wasn't wearing the clothes she had on this morning. She had changed into a pristine, bone-white power suit that made her look like a shimmering blade. Her hair was pulled back, and her expression was unreadable. She didn't look like a woman who had been crying over a scandal. She looked like she owned the building. Kavi watched Carmel's face. His brother turned pale, then gray. He looked at Liora like he was seeing a ghost rise from a grave. Good afternoon, gentlemen, Liora said. Her voice was steady, carrying through the room with ease. Please, pardon my tardiness. She walked toward the table, her stride confident. She didn't look at Carmel. She walked straight to Kavi. Kavi felt a surge of something dark and satisfied. He stood up, a rare gesture of public courtesy, and pulled out the chair for her. As she sat, the scent of her perfume filled the space between them. A few of you already know this lady, Kavi said, addressing the room while his eyes stayed on Carmel. But allow me to offer a formal reintroduction. This is Liora Elon. She is my wife, and the head legal advisor for Maisel Incorporated. The room erupted into hushed, frantic whispers. Carmel looked like he was about to choke. Liora leaned forward, a bright, sharp smile appearing on her face. He forgot one small detail, Liora added, looking directly at her ex-husband. I am also the majority shareholder of Maisel Incorporated. Shall we begin? We cannot begin without Mrs. Elon, Kavi said. He gave a sharp nod to the room, his voice smooth as silk. Liora felt his eyes on her before she even pulled out her chair. He hadn't looked away since. To the executives sitting around the long mahogany table, Kavi looked like a supportive husband. But Liora could feel the silent fury radiating off him. He was forcing a smile, trapped by the very public image he had created. She smoothed her skirt and sat down. For once, Kavi was the one who had to play a part he hated. It felt like a small, cold victory. Shall we? Kavi asked, his tone teasingly light. Liora glanced across the table. Carmel sat directly opposite her, looking like he'd seen a ghost. He was frozen, his jaw so tight it looked like it might snap. His eyes locked onto hers, holding the gaze a second too long. Kavi noticed. Liora saw his expression darken for a fraction of a second. This was exactly what Kavi wanted. He wanted to use Liora to drive Carmel to the edge. As I said, Kavi repeated, his voice dropping an octave. My wife is essential to this deal. Carmel's gaze flicked down to Leora's hand. Her wedding band caught the overhead lights, gleaming brightly. He looked like he wanted to reach across the table and rip it off her finger. Kavi didn't give him the chance to stare. He reached over and placed his hand over Leora's. It wasn't just a touch. He slowly slid his fingers between hers, locking them together. He didn't even look at her. He kept his eyes on the documents, but the message was loud and clear. She belongs to me now. Carmel's face turned a sickly shade of gray. He looked away, fumbling with the papers in front of him. Shall we begin the presentation? Yes, Kavi agreed easily. Liora cleared her throat, pushing back the nerves that threatened to make her voice shake. She had a job to do. I will be representing the interests of Maisel Incorporated in this negotiation. The executives leaned in. These were the power players of the Elon pack, and they didn't look impressed. As we all know, Liora continued, my husband's ties to the Elon family make it hard for him to be neutral. Because of that, he will not be making the final decisions today. It was a strategic move. Maisel Inc. was full of rogues who followed Kavi, and those rogues didn't trust the Elon name. For this merger to work, Liora had to be the face of it. One of the executives, a man who smelled of expensive cigars and arrogance, leaned forward. Mrs. Elon, Maisel Inc. is unconventional. How do you plan to prove your company is even legitimate? Before Liora could answer, she felt Kavi's hand move. Under the table, he shifted his grip from her hand to her thigh. Leora's heart skipped a beat. She tried to keep her face blank. We can't just let rogues into Tura because you say so, another executive added, laughing under his breath. Business is business, but territory laws are clear. Rogues are a threat. Kavi's hand began to move. He rubbed slow, purposeful circles against her skin. It felt like a brand. His fingers moved higher, inching toward the hem of her skirt. Liora forced a smile at the executive who had just spoken. There is no law that says a rogue cannot work a legitimate job. The executive's smile vanished. Even Carmel looked up from his notes. The Rogue Reformation program has existed for decades, Liora said, her voice growing firmer even as Kavi's hand slipped beneath the fabric of her skirt. The law says they deserve respect as long as they aren't a threat. We will not accept harassment of our employees. Kavi's thumb brushed against the sensitive skin of her inner thigh. Leora's breath hitched, but she caught it, turning it into a sharp exhale. She refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her stumble. Maisel Inc. has done very well in Ramat, Liora continued, leaning forward to emphasize her point. There are many other territories that would love to have our partnership. Elon Corporation is our first choice, but you are not our only choice. She let the silence hang in the room. Kavi's fingers moved again, brushing against the lace of her underwear. It was a blatant challenge. He was punishing her for being late, testing her to see if she would scream or bolt from the room. Can you say the same for the Elon pack? Liora asked. Carmel finally found his voice. Elon Corporation provides Maisel Inc. with a reputation you can't buy. You've lived in the shadows for years. You have ties to the underground. Without us, you have no legitimacy. Carmel looked at Kavi, a smug smirk growing on his lips. And no claim to this city. Kavi didn't flinch. He didn't even stop the rhythmic movement of his hand under the table. He just sat there, looking bored. Carmel's smirk widened. He thought he had one. You mean this reputation? Liora asked. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. She slid it across the polished wood table. The screen was bright, displaying a major news headline from that morning. Blackwood stocks plummet as scandal breaks. Below the headline was a high-resolution photo. It showed Carmel and Liora leaving the same building from different exits at nearly the same time. The rumors of their past were already exploding online. The boardroom erupted into whispers. The executives looked at the phone, then at Carmel, then back at the phone. Carmel's face went white. He looked like he'd been slapped. Under the table, Kavi's hand went perfectly still. He finally turned his head to look at Liora. His eyes were wide with a mix of surprise and dark curiosity. Did you do this? His gaze demanded an answer. Liora didn't give him one. She simply pulled her phone back and looked him straight in the eye. Kavi wanted to use her as a pawn in his game against Carmel? Fine. She would play. But she wasn't going to be the only one who got burned. I believe our legitimacy is the least of your concerns right now, Carmel, Liora said. Did you enjoy the show, Carmel? Or are you just here to cry about the ending? Kavi didn't look up from his desk. He kept his focus on the singed, red skin of his hand. The sink water had been scalding, a physical sting that finally matched the burn in his chest. He'd been so distracted by the image of Liora walking out of that boardroom that he hadn't even felt the heat until it blistered. He grabbed a paper towel and wiped his hand. The rough paper scraped against the burn. He didn't flinch. Pain was an old friend. He was the alpha of Elon Corporation. He was built to endure. But he wasn't built for this. Liora. The name felt like a curse. She had walked out of that meeting without a single glance his way. She had left every high-powered executive in that room breathless. For 3 years, she had been a ghost. A quiet, obedient doll for Carmel to parade around. Kavi thought he had her measured. He thought he was the one pulling the strings. He was wrong. Kavi looked at the television mounted on his office wall. The volume was muted, but the images were loud enough. Hundreds of reporters were swarming the Elon building. They weren't asking about Kavi. They weren't even asking about the corporate takeover anymore. The headlines scrolling across the bottom of the screen were a nightmare. Liora Elon and CEO Carmel, secret apartment rendezvous? Kavi felt his jaw tighten. He had planned to ruin Carmel's reputation by exposing the messy divorce. He wanted the world to see Carmel as a failure. Instead, Liora had handed the media a golden ticket. By letting herself be seen leaving that building with her ex-husband, she had painted a target on her own back. She had dragged her own name through the mud just to set Carmel's world on fire. You did this, didn't you? The voice was flat and thick with rage. Kavi finally looked up. Carmel was sitting across from his desk. He looked like a man who had just watched his house burn down. Behind Carmel, Barak stood by the door. The assistant looked like he wanted to vanish. Kavi gave a small shake of his head, dismissing him. Barak slipped out, closing the door with a soft click. Kavi didn't answer immediately. He leaned back in his leather chair, letting the silence stretch. He wanted Carmel to feel every second of the tension. I know you hate me, Kavi, Carmel hissed. He leaned forward, his eyes bloodshot. But this? Did you even think about Liora? The media is going to tear her apart. She's your wife now, or did you forget that while you were busy plotting? Kavi's expression remained a mask of ice. I didn't do it. But I'm not surprised you think so. Don't lie. Carmel slammed a fist onto the desk. You've held a grudge for over 10 years. You married her just to spit in my face. You're using her as a pawn. Kavi leaned forward. The edge in his voice was sharp enough to draw blood. I didn't marry her for you, Carmel. But looking at your face right now? It's a very nice bonus. You're sick, Carmel whispered. I'm realistic, Kavi countered. You're the one who threw her away for a true mate bond. You made your choice. Now the world thinks you're a hypocrite who can't stay away from his ex-wife's bed. Carmel's face went pale, then a deep, bruised purple. We both know what this is really about. You're still mad about the testimony. You're trying to take everything I have. Everything you stole, Kavi corrected him. His voice dropped to a low, dangerous rumble. The title. The company. The name. You're a squatter in a house I built, Cam. Liora isn't a house, Carmel snapped. She's a person. And if you think I'm going to let you use her for your twisted games, what are you going to do? Kavi interrupted. He stood up, towering over his brother. He walked around the desk, his movements slow and predatory. Last time I checked, she wears my ring. She lives in my house. She belongs to my world now. He stopped just inches from Carmel. He could smell the desperation on him. You're nothing but a memory to her, Kavi said. He tilted his head, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. A bad dream she finally woke up from. I'm the one she goes home to. I'm the one who handles her safety. You need to worry about saving your job. Carmel stood up, his fists shaking at his sides. This isn't over. It was over the second she walked out of that boardroom without looking back at you, Kavi said. He turned his back on Carmel, heading toward the floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the city. Go deal with the reporters, Cam. Try not to look too guilty when they ask if you're still in love with my wife. Carmel didn't move for a long moment. Kavi could hear his heavy, ragged breathing. Finally, the office door swung open and slammed shut. Kavi stared at his reflection in the glass. He should be happy. Carmel was ruined. The board would be calling for his head by morning. But the image of Liora wouldn't leave him. Why had she done it? Was it a calculated move to help Kavi, or was she playing a game of her own? The thought of her and Carmel in that apartment, even if it was a setup, made his blood boil. He didn't like things he couldn't control. And right now, Liora Elon was a wildfire he hadn't started. He picked up his phone and dialed Barak. Find her, Kavi ordered as soon as the line picked up. I don't care where she went or who she's with. Bring my wife to me right now. Where to? Barak asks, glancing into the rearview mirror. Home, Kavi murmurs. He doesn't even have to think about it. The paperwork from the partnership sits heavy in his briefcase, but his mind is miles away, stuck on the image of Liora in the boardroom. He can still feel the heat of her skin under his palm and the way she tore through Carmel's executives without blinking. She is a walking contradiction, a woman who looks like a dream but bites like a predator. He had walked out of that meeting oscillating between pure fury and a sharp, painful ache of attraction. She is, without a doubt, the bane of his existence. Barak breaks the silence with a knowing smirk. You have an appointment at 4. I'll go ahead and cancel it. Kavi grunts in approval, checking his watch. It's just past 3. What does the rest of the day look like? Dinner with investors at 7. Then drinks with the Elon Pack elders at 8, Barak relays. Kavi scowls at the window. Those old men are vultures. They were the first ones to scream for his head when he was cast out, and now they spend every waking moment trying to stay in his good graces. He pushes the thought of the elders aside. Where is my wife? I dropped her off at the house earlier, Barak confirms. Home it is, then. The car moves smoothly through the city streets. Kavi leans his head back, closing his eyes, but his peace is short-lived. A notification pings on Barak's phone. The driver's expression shifts instantly. Mora just texted, Barak says, his voice losing its casual edge. Liora isn't at the house. Kavi snaps his eyes open. A cold prickle of unease starts at the base of his neck. Call Mora. Now. Barak taps the hands-free system. After a brief, hushed exchange, he hangs up and looks at Kavi through the mirror. She's not there. Joel isn't at the kindergarten either. Mora checked in with the school. Liora already picked him up. Kavi's jaw tightens. Liora doesn't drive. She has no reason to be out in the city alone with the boy, and she certainly didn't call for a car. He pulls out his phone and dials her number. It rings until the voicemail kicks in. He tries again. Nothing. The unease turns into a biting frost. Is she running? Did she finally decide to take the boy and disappear? Find her, Kavi orders. His voice is a low, dangerous blade. Barak's fingers fly across a tablet, tracing the GPS tags and security feeds tied to the family account. It takes less than 10 minutes. She was last spotted entering the Barca department store. Kavi's blood turns to ice. Barca? That's Malik's territory. The Bama pack. Kavi had personally sent their alpha, Malik, to the hospital with a bullet in his leg not 6 months ago. The blood feud between Elon and Bama is decades deep. For Liora to step foot in that store isn't just a mistake, it's a death wish. Or a betrayal. Get me there. Now. Kavi growls. The tires screech as Barak pulls a sharp U-turn, weaving through traffic with aggressive precision. Kavi taps a frantic, impatient rhythm on his thigh. He dials her again. Silence. Why go across town to the one place that Elon should never be? If she is meeting Malik behind his back, if she is feeding that dog information, he will personally ensure she regrets the day they met. When the car skids to a halt in front of the luxury department store, Kavi is out the door before Barak can even shift into park. He storms through the glass doors, his presence radiating a silent, lethal aura that makes the shoppers scatter. He ignores the elevators, charging up the stairs to the VIP level. He finds her near the fitting rooms, speaking quietly to a sales clerk. No, it was a very specific request, Liora is saying. Kavi doesn't slow down. He marches straight into her line of sight, blocking her path like a mountain. Her eyes widen in a brief flash of shock before settling into a hard, confused frown. What are you doing here? She asks. She sounds annoyed, as if he is the one who has committed a massive blunder. Kavi steps into her personal space, his shadow looming over her. I could ask you the same thing, he hisses. She tilts her head, her expression unimpressed. Isn't it obvious? I'm shopping. For who? Malik? Kavi snarls, leaning down until they are nose to nose. Are you looking for a new pack to join, or are you just trying to start a war? Leora's jaw sets. Her eyes go from warm honey to cold flint. I don't know what you're talking about. You're acting like a madman. Out of every store in this city, you chose the one owned by my greatest enemy. Do you have any idea how dangerous this is? Kyla demands. She tries to sidestep him, but Kavi's hand shoots out, catching her wrist. He doesn't give her a choice. He hauls her into the nearest empty fitting room and slams the door shut. Kavi. He doesn't let her finish. His hand moves faster than she can blink, pinning her against the wall with his palm pressed firmly against the base of her throat. He isn't squeezing, but the pressure is a clear, heavy warning. Save the lies, he says, his voice vibrating with pure, unadulterated rage. The sound of her heart is racing, thumping against his hand like a trapped bird. If you're working with the Bamas, if you're selling me out to Malik, I swear to God, Liora. I'm not, she says. Her voice is incredibly calm, though her pulse betrays her. I don't even know who that is. She is terrified. He can see the slight tremble in her frame, the way her eyes glass over. But she doesn't look away. That defiance, that stubborn, beautiful pride, only makes his anger burn hotter. Before he can roar at her again, something hits the floor. Clatter. Kavi's gaze drops. A small, neatly wrapped package lies between them on the carpet. He slowly releases the pressure on her throat, his fingers lingering for a second too long on her skin. Liora reaches down, her fingers shaking as she picks up the parcel. She tears the paper away to reveal 2 leather bracelets. One is large, the other small enough for a child. Each one features a tiny, dangling charm in the shape of a knight's helmet. Kavi feels the air leave his lungs. He recognizes the design. It's from a small boutique in her hometown. Joel wanted matching ones for his first day of school, Liora says. Her voice is no longer the sharp weapon she used in the boardroom. It's a broken whisper. I had them custom-made in Ramat. They were supposed to be delivered to the house, but there was a mistake. They ended up here. She looks up at him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. The defiance is gone, replaced by a raw, stinging hurt. I just wanted to give him something to make him feel brave, she says, her lip trembling. I came to pick them up. Kavi lets his hand drop to his side. The rage that had been fueling him for the last hour vanishes, replaced by a cold, sickening weight in his gut. Guilt. Joel will be worried, Liora says, brushing past him. She doesn't wait for an apology. She doesn't even look back as she opens the door and disappears into the crowd. Liora, wait, Kavi calls out, but the words die in his throat. The black car pulled up to the back entrance of Kana. Sila stepped out and grabbed his jacket from the seat. He moved with a heavy, dangerous energy. His brows were pulled together in a deep frown. He had cancelled his entire afternoon for this urgent call. If the reason was petty, someone would pay the price. Sila was not a patient man. When he was unhappy, things tended to break. The nightclub was alive. Even at this hour, a long line of people stretched around the front of the building. They all hoped to get inside the invite-only club. But Kana was not for everyone. It was a playground for the top 1%. Sila ignored the crowd and headed for the private door. Kyron was waiting by the entrance. He jogged over to meet Sila and Barak. Kyron usually kept his cool, but today his face was tight. He looked like he was ready to hit something. What happened? Barak asked. Alpha Assassin is here, Kyron said. His voice was thick with anger. He tried to break in with a group of fighters. Sila watched Kyron closely. He knew it took a lot to get under Kyron's skin. Kyron had spent half his life as a rogue. He was used to handling problems with his fists before Sila even arrived. The fact that he was waiting here meant the situation was explosive. They are demanding to see you, Kyron added. And they aren't being polite about it. Sila let out a short, cold laugh. It wasn't a sound of joy. It was the sound of a predator spotting prey. Demand? Sila repeated the word like it was a foreign language. Nobody used that word with him. At least, nobody who wanted to keep breathing. It seemed the Bama pack was slow to learn. Sila knew Alpha Assassin was overprotective. He had coddled his son, Malik, for years. Even though Malik was now an alpha himself, he was still a coward. He was a boy playing at being a man because his father always cleaned up his messes. They're armed, Barak said. He shifted his weight, looking at Sila. He must be losing his mind because you shot Malik. Sila felt a smirk tug at his lips. He should be grateful I didn't aim for the heart. Of course they were armed. Even a fool like Sasson knew better than to come at Sila empty-handed. Sela was a different kind of monster. He had the raw power of a pack wolf but none of the rules to hold him back. If Sasson thought he could scare Sela, he was about to get a very expensive lesson. "Where is he?" Sela asked. "The fight den," Chiron replied. "Let them in," Sela ordered. He started walking past them into the club. "And lock the doors behind us." If Alpha Sasson wanted to break into the fight den, Sela would make sure he stayed there. Sela had not returned to Tura for peace and quiet. He came back to take what was his. He headed for the elevator. The doors slid open at the lowest level of the building. The air down here was thick with the smell of sweat, expensive bourbon, and tension. The fight den was Sela's pride. It was a place where rogues could fight for respect and money in a controlled ring. A decade ago, the Pax looked down on it. Now, it was a massive business. Sela stepped out and felt a dozen eyes on him. The room was packed with alphas and high-ranking shifters. They were all sitting in plush leather chairs around the center ring. A fight was happening in the middle of the room, but the crowd wasn't watching the ring anymore. They were watching the door. Sela scanned the room. He didn't care about the elite audience. He only cared about the man sitting at a table on the far side of the den. Alpha Sasson was staring at him. Sela had felt that stare the second the elevator doors opened. He intentionally took his time. He wanted Sasson to know he wasn't a priority. "Don't push him too hard," Barack whispered. "He's already on the edge." Sela didn't slow down. He walked with a relaxed, confident stride. He didn't look like a man walking toward a vengeful father. He looked like a king walking through his own living room. When Sela was only a few feet away, Sasson moved. His hand flashed from the table to his jacket. In one quick motion, Sasson pulled a handgun and fired a shot into the ceiling. The boom echoed off the concrete walls. The fighters in the ring stopped. The music cut out. Silence fell over the den like a heavy blanket. Sasson lowered the gun until the barrel was pointed right at Sela's chest. His finger hugged the trigger. Sasson expected Sela to stop. He expected Sela to flinch or put his hands up. Sela did neither. He kept walking. He didn't stop until his chest was inches away from the muzzle of the gun. At this range, a single shot would tear right through him. Sela stared into the older man's eyes. He didn't show a flicker of fear. "Give me one good reason why I shouldn't put a hole through you right now," Sasson hissed. His hand was shaking with rage. Sela tilted his head. He looked bored. "An eye for an eye, Sasson." Sela leaned in just a fraction closer to the weapon. "Are you sure the Bama pack can afford that trade? Do you really want to find out if I have the nerve?" Kavi asked. He stood in the center of the den, his arms crossed over his chest. His posture was loose and relaxed. Across from him, Alpha Sasson looked like a man about to explode. Sasson's hand shook as he gripped the pistol, his knuckles turning white. The air in the room felt heavy, like the moments before a lightning strike. Kavi frowned. He checked his watch and then looked back at the older Alpha. "Well?" Kavi prompted. "I am not a patient man, Sasson. I don't have all night to watch you decide if you are brave enough to pull that trigger." Sasson's eyebrows drew together. He opened his mouth to speak, but Kavi moved faster than the eye could follow. In one smooth motion, Kavi reached out and snatched the gun right out of Sasson's hand. He flipped the weapon in the air and pointed it directly at Sasson's forehead. "Alpha," the Bama warriors shouted. 5 wolves moved at once, ready to pounce. Sasson threw up a hand to signal them to stay back. He didn't move an inch, but Kavi saw the flash of panic in the man's eyes. Sasson knew the truth. Kavi did not care about territory laws or the unwritten rules of the packs. Most alphas avoided killing their own kind to keep the peace. Kavi had no such hesitation. He believed in a different kind of law. He believed in making sure an enemy never had the chance to crawl back for seconds. "Are you ready to test your theory now?" Kavi asked. He moved his finger until it rested firmly against the trigger. "You won't do it," Sasson said, though his voice lacked conviction. "No one here will stand for a cold-blooded execution." Kavi let a cold smirk pull at the corner of his mouth. 3 loud bangs echoed through the underground den. The sound was deafening in the small space. Sasson flinched hard, his eyes going wide with pure horror. He gasped, checking his chest for holes, his face pale as a sheet. It took a few seconds for the older man to realize he wasn't hit. He looked behind him and saw the carnage. 3 of the 5 warriors who had followed him into the den were now crumpled on the floor. They clutched their legs and shoulders, howling in agony. Kavi looked around the room with a bored expression. He didn't even look at the bleeding men. He turned his gaze back to Sasson. "It seems like no one minds at all," Kavi said. "You're a monster," Sasson hissed. "I am a man who knows the law," Kavi corrected him. His voice was eerily calm. "You walked into my territory with weapons drawn. You threatened me in my own home. By pack law, your life belongs to me. I can do whatever I want with it." Kavi leaned in closer, his shadow falling over the older alpha. "Neither you nor your son can afford this fight," Kavi whispered. "You came here looking for trouble. If I were you, I would go home and pray that Malik recovers. If word gets out that the alpha of Bama is weak and his son is broken, how long do you think you'll keep your title? People already say you don't deserve it." "Kavi. You bastard." Sasson lunged forward, his shoulders shaking with rage.